Hello, welcome to a new episode of After Dark Fairy Tales. Got a new tale for you guys, and the original title of this one was called It Came from the Woods. I did retitle it He Prays, and pray as in, of course you already know, P-R-E-Y-S. So with the author's permission, he allowed me to retitle the story, and it's retitled He Prays. And this story was originally published on Reddit. It was on Reddit No Sleep, and I posted the link to the story where it's posted, and I also posted a link to the author's page. The author goes by the name Clungjay1, and you can check out his other stories as well. I'm honored that he wanted me to narrate this story, and I'm going to share it with you all tonight. Hope you all enjoy it. And to all my new subscribers, I'd like to say welcome to After Dark Fairy Tales. I hope you all are enjoying the stories and finding them entertaining. That I'm able to represent these talented authors and represent their work in verbal form. And just hope all of you are enjoying it. And I want to thank you for your support and being here. So, are you ready to find out what He Prays? Originally titled It Came from the Woods. You ready to find out what that's about? Well, here we go. He Prays by Clungjay1. Have you ever felt a strong presence from the woods? A feeling like you're being watched? Well, the truth is, something is watching you from the trees and shadows. Monsters hide in the woods, preying on the innocent and striking quickly. They won't stop. They never will. This is my story, and I hope it serves as a warning about the truth of the woods and how dangerous it truly is, how dangerous they are. Growing up, I never had a dad. My father left me, and my mom, when I was young, and I haven't seen him since. Sure, I get the occasional birthday or Christmas card with money, but besides that, he's almost a stranger to me. After my father left, my mother decided to leave the city life behind, and we moved when I was 10 to Wisconsin, where we bought a small cabin out in the woods. At first, I hated living there. The woods always terrified me as a kid. Every time I looked out the window towards the woods, I always got an unsettling feeling. Chills would run up my spine, and I would start to shake uncontrollably. I always felt something was watching me. The feeling never went away, even as I got older. I hated the walk to school I had to make every day. The looming feeling of getting watched grew even stronger as I walked in the woods. I felt so vulnerable looking at the tall trees. The woods I lived by had almost an endless stretch of tall trees in the forest. I felt something was watching me up on those trees. My mom, though, felt completely different about the woods. She loved it. She loved taking walks outside and just staring at the trees and the forest, taking all of nature in. She was an artist, so she loved to just sit outside and paint the trees. Many of the portraits in our cabin were of the trees and the forest. I asked her if she ever felt a presence when she was out there, like something watching her. Yes, I feel a strong presence, but it's a comforting one, she said. I feel safe and protected. I never understood why she had such a comforting feeling from the woods, while I felt a terrifying one that kept me wide awake almost every night. On one night, when I was about to go to sleep, I saw something from the trees. It was far off in the distance, but I could barely make out the silhouette of a figure. It was big and bulky, with long arms, and from the angle it looked like it was staring right at me. I froze as I stared at it. Then I heard my mom walking into my room and when I turned to see her open the door, I looked back to see the figure gone. I tried telling my mom, but she never listened. She said I was simply imagining things and that I needed to quit being scared of the woods. The woods protect us from the outside world, Michael. They are a shield to all the bad things in the world. I knew what I saw, and I know whatever it was wasn't protecting me. On the way to school that morning, I felt the presence stronger than ever. Every time I turned around, though, nothing was there. Suddenly, I heard a branch snap behind me, and I didn't dare turn around. I couldn't move. Then I heard another branch snap, and I took off running. I could hear fast steps behind me as I was running, which made me run faster. I could hear the footsteps gaining on me. When it seemed they were right on me, I burst out of the woods, sweating like a pig. The day went by normal. Once school was over, I asked my friend James if he wanted to walk home with me. James was my best friend and the only person who understood my fear of the woods. He lived close by to me, and he also could feel a disturbing presence watching him. He tried telling his parents like I did with mine, but they didn't listen either. "Dude, did that really happen?" he asked as I told him about what happened on the walk to school. "Yeah, man, I just don't feel comfortable walking in those woods alone. I know there's something in there," I said. "What do you think it is?" James asked as we started walking home. "I don't know. I think I saw it last night, though. It was like really big with huge long arms. It was far away, so I couldn't see anything else." He was quiet now. Then he said, "I think I've seen it too. I saw something last night. It was a lot like the thing you described." Then we heard a loud snap behind us and turned around to see a tree branch on the ground, snapped in half. Dude, something's following us. We need to run," James said. "No, don't run. I did that and it chased me. Maybe if we keep walking slowly, it won't do anything." James, looking terrified at me, nodded his head slowly as we started walking. We heard more snaps as we walked, getting louder and closer as we walked. I looked over at James. He looked back at me, white as a ghost. After what felt like an hour, I could see the outline of my house in the distance. Our pace quickened as we got closer and closer to my house, the snaps and cracks quickening as well behind us. As soon as we got close enough, we took off in a dead sprint towards my house, not looking back. We ran inside and locked the door. Once we were in, we breathed a sigh of relief. "Everything okay?" I heard my mom say behind me. We looked at each other. Then I heard James say, "Yeah, Mrs. S. We just raced each other to the house." She looked at me, and I nodded quickly. "Okay, be careful though with the door. It's old, and I don't want it falling off." "Okay, sorry, Mom," I said as James started to run off up the stairs. Once upstairs and in my room, James said, "Dude, we can't walk that way to school." "I know, but what will we tell our parents? They won't believe us," I said. James was silent now. I knew he wouldn't be able to come up with anything. "I think as long as we're quiet and walk slow, that thing won't come after us," I said. "Yeah, let's hope so," James said in a quivering voice. James went home shortly after that, and after I ate dinner, I headed upstairs to bed. What is that thing? I think as I laid in bed, a person? An animal? It's fast like an animal, but it looks like a tall person. I looked out the window into the dark forest and froze. The thing was there and closer. I could make out more characteristics as I stared at it. It had a hunchback and long fingers with razor-sharp claws. I didn't see any eyes on it, but I could somehow feel its cold stare locked on me. It just stared, observing me. Then it turned around and walked back into the forest. That is no person or animal, I think to myself. Once it's gone, it wants me. I'm its prey. After a restless night of sleep, I woke up and walked downstairs to see my mom sitting on the counter with a worried look on her face. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" I asked. "Morning, honey. I have some bad news," she said, looking at me. "What is it?" I asked. "Your friend James, well, he's missing. His parents went into his room this morning and he was gone." I stood there, petrified. It wasn't following us. It was tracking us. Tracking James? "Are you okay, Michael?" she asked. I could only see James's face in my mind now. The image of him looking at me as we were walking home, white as a ghost. I couldn't keep everything in, and I told my mom everything. The thing that chased me and James being stalked by it, and seeing it for the past 2 nights getting closer to me. "You've got to believe me, Mom," I pleaded. "Something is in those woods and it took James, and now I think it's going to take me." She looked at me with a sad expression. She sighed, then said, "I know this must be hard for you, Michael, but there's nothing in those woods. James might have ran away or anything could have happened." "Mom, it took him. James would never run away from his parents," I said. She looked at me, then looked at the clock behind me. "I think it's time you get to school, my dear. We'll talk about this later." I pleaded with my mom to drive me to school, begged her on my knees. She finally relented after a minute. Okay. Just this one time. We need to leave now, though, and be quick. I have to get to the studio." I thanked her and ran to get my backpack and stuff. Nothing happened on the drive as I expected. After dropping me off at the front of the school, everyone ran up to me and asked if I heard about what happened to James. Everyone was talking about James that day. They started rumors, either saying he ran away or was kidnapped. "Do you know what happened to him?" Sally asked frantically as she ran up to me at lunch. She had a crush on James since the 2nd grade, and even though James showed no signs of affection towards her, she still adored him. She was a short girl with short brown hair and brown eyes. I debated about whether I should tell Sally the truth, but I knew she wouldn't believe me. No one would. I told her I didn't know and tried to continue eating my lunch, but she wouldn't give up. "Come on, Michael. You're his best friend. Please, if you know anything that could have happened to him, please tell me," she said with tears in her eyes. I tried ignoring her, but she wouldn't stop. Then her friends came over and started asking me. Then more and more people came, asking if I knew what happened to James. The voices became too much for me, and I screamed, "I don't know what happened to him. Please, leave me alone." I screamed as loud as I could. Everyone stopped talking and now stared at me. My cheeks started to turn red as I got embarrassed. The bell rang and everyone started heading off to class, leaving me still sitting at the lunch table. I packed my unfinished lunch and started to head off to my science class, which I had next. I decided then and there that I would find James. I had to know if he was alive or not. "James, if you're still alive, I'll find you." After school, I called my mom and asked if she could pick me up. She said she could, and 5 minutes later, she pulled up in her white Cadillac. As we drove home, she asked, "Feeling better, honey?" I lied, saying, "Much better." I knew she would never believe me. I was going to have to face that thing on my own. We got home and I headed straight upstairs where I dumped all my school supplies on my bed. and started to pack gear for the night. I packed spare flashlight batteries, some water, and I put the pepper spray my mom gave me last year in my pocket just in case. As I was eating dinner, I came up with a plan. I would sneak out of the house when my mom went to bed, which was usually around 10, and I would head into the woods and try to find where James was. I knew my chances against that thing were slim to none, so I knew I would have to be quiet and careful. After dinner, I went to my room and waited. I waited for hours until I looked over at my clock, which read 10:30 p.m. I hopped out of bed and walked over to the window, opening it quietly. I made a little rope with my bed sheets as I waited, and I knew I wouldn't be able to jump off the window without getting hurt. I tied the rope against my bed and started to climb out of the house slowly. Once down, I turned my flashlight on and aimed it towards the woods. It was even more terrifying now. The trees seemed endless, and I couldn't even see the moon. I took a deep breath and started to walk slowly into the woods. I noticed something that started to scare me quickly once I was walking. There was absolutely no noise. It was silent, not a peep, no crickets, no owls, nothing. I flashed my light around quickly, calling out James's name quietly. James! James, are you out there? Nothing but silence echoed through the woods. I walked towards the direction of James's house, thinking maybe he might be there. As I'm about halfway to his house, the battery for my flashlight dies. Darkness now engulfs me as I panic. I scramble for the batteries in my backpack. Once I find them, I take the dead batteries out of my flashlight and I put the new ones in. When I turned my light back on, I screamed. Standing in front of me was that thing. The fear I felt was indescribable. Even to this day, the image of it still fills my dreams with nightmares. It had no skin. It was all red muscles and tissue. It had no eyes, and its mouth was full of dozens of razor-sharp teeth as it smiled and drooled, looking down at me. It was at least 9 feet tall, and it had a bad hunch in its back. Its claws were even sharper, close up, as sharp as its teeth were. Its upper body was big and bulky, while its long legs were skinny as a twig. Its arms were huge, with big muscles and bulging veins. I screamed even more as it bent down and picked me up by my head. It dragged me across the woods as I kicked and screamed, "Stupid, stupid, stupid, stupid. What the hell were you thinking coming into the woods?" I thought. It dragged me until I eventually passed out. When I woke up, I found myself in a dark cave hanging upside down by at least 5 feet. The cave looked ancient, with 3 tunnels that led into darkness. I had never seen this cave in the woods, never even knew there was one in the first place. The light that was in the cave was from a single fire in the middle of the cave. I could see my backpack on the ground with my phone near it. I tried to reach and grab it, but I couldn't move. The thing had wrapped ropes around my ankles to the sharp rocks above me. I was hopeless. I thought to James now as I started to look around the cave. In one of the corners of the caves, I saw a single orange t-shirt on the ground. That's James's shirt, I realized. Suddenly, I heard heavy footsteps walking towards me. I saw the thing walk into the cave as it stared at me. I panicked and started screaming again. Then the thing spoke in a dark and gruff voice. "Quiet food. Maybe I'll let you live a little longer." I shut up now, petrified as it spoke to me. I saw in its hand a leg, Oh God, please let that not be James, I thought. It spoke again now. I've been watching you for a long time. You have always looked the most appetizing of everyone. It lifted up the leg in its hand, then said, Your friend here tasted wonderful, but I think you'll taste even better, it said with a twisted grin on its face. I started to cry, weeping at the loss of my friend, and knowing that I would follow in his footsteps. Somehow, I got out a question in a shaky voice. What are you? The thing looked down at me for a moment, thinking, then said, I am an ancient being. My kind is almost extinct, as there are only a few of us left. We have ruled the woods for the past centuries, preying on anything that sets foot on any of our lands. Over time, hunters have come and killed most of my kind. Now we hide in the shadows, only coming out when food is near. I think for a moment before asking another question. Do you only eat young kids? The thing now smiled, showing off its dozen of teeth as it said, Of course, kids taste the best. Every juicy and sweet. It had cut me off the ropes with its claws, squeezing me with its ginormous hands as it started to open its mouth. I was barely able to ask one more question. How can you hunt without any eyes? It stared at me, closing its mouth before saying, I can track your scent. My nose serves as my eyes, as I have none. I smell my food out before I come for it at night. Lucky for me, I didn't have to come for you. You came to me. It opened its mouth wide as I panicked, starting to throw myself around, trying to get out of its grasp. Hold still, food. It boomed at me. I was somehow able to move my hands into my pocket, where miraculously I felt the pepper spray that didn't fall out of my pocket. I acted quickly as I got closer to the thing's mouth and pulled out the pepper spray and sprayed it into its face. It shrieked as it dropped me, crying and holding its face. I got up quickly and ran towards the middle entrance where the creature came from. I ran as fast as I could, hearing the creature give chase behind me. I ran until I somehow found the entrance to the cave. I saw light illuminating from the entrance as I ran with all my might into the day. I kept running even after I was out of the cave. I ran and never looked back. I was able to somehow navigate my way through the forest back to the cabin. I gave a sigh of relief once I saw the cabin and stopped running. I looked behind me now, expecting the thing to be right behind me, ready to strike. Nothing was there. I walked back to the cabin, out of breath. When I opened the door, my mom ran towards me, embracing me as she cried, Where have you been? I called the police and they couldn't find you. I thought I lost you. I didn't say anything. I was tired and hungry, but worst of all, I was terrified, knowing that more of those things were out there, waiting for me. We moved shortly after that to Chicago and moved in with my aunt. I grew up normally and made new friends in Chicago, even got a new best friend named Kyle. I never forgot about James, though. He was my first best friend who had my back and died in the hands of a monster. The thought of that thing still haunts me now. I tried telling my mom what happened many times, but I couldn't. I knew she still wouldn't believe me. What scares me the most is knowing there are still more of those things out there, hunting in the shadows. I write this story to tell everyone, to warn everyone about these things. They hunt for children, feasting on them. Be careful near the woods. You never know what lurks in the shadows of the trees. Please don't ever go into the woods at night. They are watching and waiting for you. So, you guys like that one? So that's a warning, y'all. Don't go hiking. Stay out of them woods. Or if you do go hiking, stay packed. Have an AR-15, some hand grenades. I think you'll be okay. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. And I want to give all credit to Clungjay1 for allowing me to narrate his story, wanting me to narrate it. And please check out his other stories on his Reddit page. I posted all the links in the description box. So I hope you guys liked He Prays, which was originally titled It Came from the Woods. And you guys let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And I'll be back next time with another After Dark fairy tale. And until then, good night, my darlings.